Sarala has joined.
Just 1 minute and then we'll start. Huh? We can start, Jamila.
Yes. A very warm welcome to all the AIWC members, all our well-wishers, friends, faculty who have joined us on this platform. Once again, we go for our literary and cultural program, which we started almost 4 years back. We are now on session 59. And under the series, Narratives of Cultural and Personal Experiences, we are doing session 7. Initially, we had a range of topics, but this time, after we started focus on narratives of cultural and personal experiences, we've been focusing on basically writers who are creative and who are talking to us about their personal experiences, of course, relating it to their cultural context as well. Today, we have Dr. Fathima Nizaruddin with us, and she is a postdoctoral researcher from the University of Passau, Germany. She is also a documentary filmmaker and researcher in media studies. She did her practice-based PhD in media, arts, and design from the University of Westminster, London. She was an assistant professor at AJK Mass Communication Research Center, Jamia Millia Islamia, from 2007 to 2020. So a rich experience of 13 years that she has had there. And her documentary films have been screened at various international film festivals and academic spaces. So we have here a very young scholar with us today who has moved into new areas of research and methodology. It is indeed a privilege to welcome you, Fatima, to this forum and to have you here as a speaker on the topic practice-based artistic research. Now, when you suggested this topic, I, as a researcher and as a research guide, was taken back to my own days of research and the programs of research that I did with my students. One of the things that we hear about today is that there are so many PhDs. PhDs mushrooming everywhere, but no knowledge transference, no inventions, nothing that is innovative, nothing that contributes positively to the development of society. Research should be mainly that. Research should have a handle on society and be able to bring innovation, understanding, and new ways of apprehending and looking at the spaces around us, whether it be social spaces or political spaces, literary or films, artistic painting or artifacts. All these are areas that should actually tell us something more than what already exists. Looking at research, one always has this feeling, right, go back to Aristotle and Aristotle's Poetics, and one gets this feeling here is where theory started. The critical understanding of literary works began. Now, critical understanding of a literary work is always based on certain surmises, certain understandings. Remember when women's studies came to the center of our universities and colleges, everybody was talking about what is there in women's studies that is new? Women have always been represented, whether it be Shakespeare or whether it be more recent writers. But the issue was that it was not women writing about women of their own experiences. And that added a new dimension. When we talk about women's politics, it is not the political arena of what we call a male arena, but it is an arena of the family, because women are rooted in what is called the personal is political and the political is personal. So I think what I was fascinated with Fatima's documentary film that she did was it was based on a theoretical premise of how a woman looks at herself, understands her family, and then tries to draw a theoretical conclusion out of it. And what was that theoretical conclusion? Some of us saw that film. And that was women should be brave enough to break the shackles of being bound to a family life and not go ahead with a career or ahead with a profession. And that is exactly what Fatima did. She decided that she wanted a career. She left Trivandrum when most Muslim girls would not have ventured out of Kerala. She went to Delhi. She went to London first, did her PhD there, came back to Delhi, and then left on a postdoctoral for Germany. So this is the route that she has carved for herself. And in carving this route, she has also contributed much innovative thinking to what society is, so that's what society is becoming, and what is the future of society, especially through her studies on media and art. Today, we all know that the social media at our fingertips tells us so many things. We do not know how to discriminate. We take everything for granted. We believe the social media often without thinking about critically about it. And that is not innovation. And that is not what you'd call a personal upgradation or a personal becoming, because an individual continues to grow, to develop. An individual always, identity we say is not a being, but it is a becoming. But you ask somebody, what is your identity? And you would say that this is what I am. But that is, the I am is constantly being remade. And that is the theoretical premise with which we start. When Stuart Hall says that identity is not just a being, it is a becoming. You can continuously grow. So theoretical presumptions, whether in literature we talk about structuralism, post-structuralism, modernism, postmodernism, we talk about colonialism, post-colonialism. From what I'm saying, you would immediately catch this word post. Everything that comes after something. And what comes after something is a new beginning. Scientific explorations have taken us beyond this world into space. That is because there is a theoretical understanding or premise behind it. When Newton talked about the apple dropping from a tree, he was actually telling us a scientific truth. And many such scientific truths together form the basis of any analysis of our society. And what we need to understand is that unless a structural basis to knowledge is developed, is made, and is formulated, we do not proceed further into new inventions or innovations. Unless there is what Claude Lévi-Strauss would say, unless you have a structure to the society. He was one of those anthropologists who went into the darkness of the African forests, and he gathered together stories from the tribes. He put these stories together and he said that there is a structure to these stories. And this structure was, there was always something that happens that promotes something else, which in fact promotes something else. So there is a chain of events. And this is what we call life. That life is never a stasis, it is always a process of change. And that is what we are seeing in the world of research as well. Today we are talking, as Fatima is going to talk us about practice-based artistic research. Artistic research always was confined to a writing of a thesis of the art. But today we are talking about how the practice of that art is understood, the journey that is made in the making of the art to the final product, and then to tell us how that is being made. That is practice-based artistic research. You have a product at the end of it, but it is not just a product in words. I remember at a point of time when we talked about theater, there were many, I would say, many scholars in the field who used to say that theater and drama cannot be confined into just a thesis in words. You have to see the drama, you have to experience the theater in order to write about it and to make something out of it. And that is what I think now Fatima, with her experience of the art and research and social media, which she has in fact made her borders of analysis, uh, borderless analysis, I should say, because she moves easily into so many different fields of knowledge and experiences. That is what pure research is today. And that is what research really gives us gives us something new to the society. I read an article in the Indian Express recently which said that where is real research going? And this is real research. Unless you are able to say something new, unless you are able to base it on a structural analysis of what has been done all along, there is no new contribution to knowledge. And that is what in science or in arts and literature we have to be looking for. So today we have a very good scholar with us, Dr. Fathima Nizaruddin, who will talk to us about practice-based artistic research. Once again, a very warm welcome to Fatima, to all the members who have joined us on this, and with this preliminary remarks about what research is and what practice is. And I'm sure Fatima is going to say that practice and research are not different from one another. Practice is based on artistic research. So over to you, Fatima. You can go ahead now.
Thanks a lot, Jamila ma'am, for a very generous introduction and for stating the first thing out for me that, new knowledge, that is, of course, the place from which all research starts. Thanks a lot. And thank you for inviting me, and thank you all for joining. I would first like to share the PPT. And,
yes.
Visible. Yeah. So, as Jamila ma'am said, I'm going to speak about practice-based artistic research, which actually means slightly different things in different parts of the world, because this is something which is still in the process of being made. So, for me, fundamentally, one of the first things which really interests me is as Jamila ma'am said, for any research, whether it's in science or anything, in first, when you just start a PhD, this is what is first told to you. You have to bring some new knowledge. You cannot just repeat what somebody else has said. You don't need to bring like this groundbreaking thing of something what Newton came up with or Einstein came up with, but it could be something very small, but you have to add to the new knowledge, standing on the shoulders of those who have gone before. So that is a basic premise of any kind of academic research, including in science or humanities, everywhere. So here the argument in artistic research is like this there is a possibility of new knowledge in art practice as well. For example, can you take the documentary form, a particular documentary form, to a different level? So where are you pushing the boundaries of that art form? So that is a particular kind of inquiry. And I really like this book of Sullivan. It really talks about like how we very often limit knowledge to the reading and writing process. And there is an argument that there is a knowledge making in making process, in practice, which there are many other scholars also talk about, professional practitioners, different people. There is a doctor who is spending so many hours, in the clinic. There is the nurses. There is that amount of, when you spend extended amounts on the field, there is something with the practice. There is a particular form of knowledge which emerges through that. And the argument is, in the artistic research, it's not just limited to the written form or what can be reduced to the written form. So that is a premise within which I also work with. And as I said, it means so many different things in different parts of the world. And this book, it is not very kind to practice-based artistic research. It finds fault with this new form of research, I would say, in some ways. But it really gives an account of how it is in the US, how is it working in UK, where it's like a very big field of inquiry, and how it but in Europe and UK there are slight differences. In US it's treated differently. Australia, it is there. So this book is a very nice introduction into all these different approaches. So as a young researcher who is trying to do practice-based research, one of the things you have to figure out is also, where do you stand? It's a very, very new area, and there is no like very clear-cut things. Like, for example, it is a bit like quantitative. If you look at quantitative research, qualitative research, I would say it's, and many others have also argued, it's another form of research like that. So I would say probably it's a bit like when the qualitative research would have emerged, there will be a lot of finding fault with the new method till that methodology is accepted and taken, like, everybody agrees to a set standard. So there is a process of making which is happening. I would argue that practice-based research is right now in that place where, different countries, there is different approaches, and things have been, though it is like a very well-established practice in many parts of the world, but to find a common practice across as a young researcher is a little difficult. So when you talk to colleagues who are coming from a different approach, when you talk to those from the US who are studying in the US, when I was studying I did my practice-based PhD from UK, so their approach was a little different. In Germany, it was different. So it's still evolving, which can be stressful when you're a young researcher, or it could also be a point of advantage as well. So in practice,
Fatima, can you put it in slideshow mode, please?
Okay.
Then we can see it better.
Okay. I thought this was in slideshow. I think I can try once more.
It's difficult to read
this, right?
It's very small, so put it on a slide.
So, I'll just do that. I'll try to show it from my computer.
So that maybe slideshow on the menu on top. You can click on that.
Yeah.
Slideshow.
Yeah. I will.
Or there'll be that small icon at the bottom of the screen, right bottom. No, then it's fine. You please carry on. We won't waste time. You can carry on.
So the thing, for example, generally it consists of a thesis and a film. in my case, it was a film because it was, you can do it in different art forms. I come from a documentary filmmaking background. So it was a documentary film that I made, which is around 50 minutes, and you have like an accompanying thesis. This is also the UK model. I got a scholarship to do this from University of Westminster. So which had a very good department where there were different scholars who were all working on practice-based artistic research. It was called the CREAM program. It was a good thing to work with other researchers who were also working with this, what was to me a very new approach of working, because this was not something I was familiar with from India. So for me, it was good to work with colleagues who were working in the similar field with a similar methodology. And there we had like in Westminster, you had a standard thing of like a thesis will be roughly like 40,000 words. It will be 100,000 words for like a full, for a theory thesis. Whereas here it was a 40,000 words for practice. Was like, you know, it had to be of another thing which they stressed was the art research, the artistic practice also should be of a substantial length. It can be very short, was something which we worked. So I had like 50 minutes plus film. This was part of it. So I was looking at, I'm a documentary filmmaker. So I was looking at the knowledge claims in the state documentary films around the nuclear, which was mainly produced by Films Division and Vigyan Prasad, which had a very particular way of narration, which comes from a particular history and all that. And I was looking at the Kudankulam anti-nuclear movement. I am working with the people there. So as I was looking at ways to destabilize authoritarian knowledge claims, which were there in this earlier practice of documentaries. And documentary itself has this way of making very authoritarian knowledge claims. It's a form which lends itself to it at very often times. It's a particular way of truth telling. So this is something which I wanted to destabilize or play with. How can you use satire, etc. So this resulted in this film, which is called Nuclear Hallucinations. So this is set around the anti-nuclear movement in Kudankulam. And as for me to develop this, something which was very integral was this idea of tamasha, which it was a conceptual tool which I was playing with in the film as well as the research. So this is something about practice-based research, like, you know, you cannot make a film to illustrate. Your art product shouldn't be an illustration. Neither should your thesis be an illustration. So the idea is that they need to work together to produce new knowledge, which is very tricky when you're a PhD student to reach that place, you know, and to say every time, the first time they'll say, oh, this is just an illustration. Either they will say your film is an illustration or your thesis is an illustration. So it's something which you have to work with to figure out how they inform each other and they work together. So for me, tamasha was something integral. Tamasha I was taking from the South Asian meaning of tamasha, because we have something that, you know, we say, yeah, it's a tamasha. You can say an election is a tamasha, a huge event has become a tamasha. A marriage, you can call it, has become a tamasha, a big ceremony. So the idea is that the moment somebody says it's a tamasha, it becomes a thing of joke. It loses its place within this very solemn order of things. And one of the things is then it becomes possible to, I would like to use this one instance, which happened in colonial India, which Gyan Prakash quotes, because one of the colonial governments rationale was that the Indians lack science and the colonial power is bringing science. So in order to awe the people with like this huge, they had these huge spectacles of what was science for them. There was a spectacle. So this person was complaining, but the people are not getting awed by this spectacle. Instead, they're treating it like a tamasha. You know, they're just watching it like a show. So this was like one way of looking at authority and subverting authority. So this is something which I wanted to work with. So because once you look at something as a tamasha, it loses its legitimacy in like the very solemn order of things. So this is something which I was working with. And for me, it was also something like I was critiquing knowledge claims and trying to earn a PhD with it, which was also, for me, I was treating my own practice also as a tamasha, because this whole idea of what, many of you would have seen, like Foucault saying about the link between knowledge and power, what you become says become important, or you gain a PhD because there is power apparatus of the university behind it. If I just say it anywhere, it wouldn't become like knowledge. So while critiquing knowledge claims, I was trying to earn a PhD. So that was something which I was I was saying that actually this process of PhD also, I was treating it as a tamasha. Another thing was also, you have to quote dead white men if you are in the field, because that's the majority of theory is coming from there, including Foucault, of course. But without that, if I don't quote any of them, I wouldn't gain a PhD. They'll say like your work is not scholarly enough. So this is something which you always face up with. You cannot come up with a PhD which is completely your reference list. You have to refer to certain people. So for me, one of the things was very interesting, that I was working with documentary theory, and our university had like a huge shelf of roughly 100 to 200 books on documentary theory, which we all go through. But I mean, there were very few of them. They all claimed that they're talking of documentary around the world, but they hardly ever mentioned Indian documentary. They were able to theorize about the whole documentary by just looking at, like, mostly Anglo-Saxon documentaries. They're theorizing about the whole world. Whereas Indian films division was one of the biggest documentary producing units in the world over many years of existence. It had a very complicated and complex history. What kind of films, etc., is another thing. And it had different phases, but it was there, and it was not mentioned in the books that you read. But you had to use those books which created theory out of very Anglo-Saxon context for the whole world. If I don't use the theory, then my work doesn't become legitimate. So that was also something I was trying to play with. So here in my thesis also, you have a little liberty if you are a practice-based researcher. So it had this one warning, a small box said, at some times hallucinations will take over, and a few lines will be written without my own control. So throughout the thesis, you will see this very small blue lines where I'm trying to use a hallucinatory voice to critique about this process of having to work like this. And at the same time, and similarly, my film also had this hallucination. Like the film also is using hallucination as a trope. It also has a character who's hallucinating, so which kind of works in the film as well as the thesis. So this was something which, so this tamasha and the frame and the hallucination was which linked both of my theses together. And as I said, you cannot have an illustration. So this was a tough PhD phase. And after that, I came back to India to teach. In India, Jamia Millia Islamia AJK Mass Communication Research Center started practice-based artistic research. And Professor Obaid Siddiqui, who passed away, he initiated this introduction of practice-based PhD. And right now also you will see, like if you go into the Jamia's website, you will see this introduction on practice-based PhD, and it also gives you a list of how it should be. And this is something which when you have lot of when you are in the process of selecting students, this is a problem, because many people don't understand what is practice-based PhD. They will write a proposal and then will have an illustration, a film as an illustration, which doesn't work. So we had this thing at that point of time, written whole thing down of how it is for a new candidate to look at things. So in the Indian system, this is I'm one of the first places to introduce it, if not the first. But the problem is, in many parts of the world, especially after PhD, like I tried doing postdocs. Then people tell, when you write to them and say you're doing practice-based research, they'll come back and say, we only support scholarly research, as if practice-based research is not scholarly research. So this is a struggle you do have. And also because it's a methodology which is still gaining its ground. So for my postdoc, I was working with I would say I had a little more freedom, because it was not the PhD where you had to pass the test, you know. So here I was working at right-wing WhatsApp circulations in North India, because we all have heard about the WhatsApp University, right? You know, all kinds of falsehoods, and lot of polarization was happening, and all kinds of polarization on the basis of religion, etc. This was happening. So I was trying to work with as a practice-based researcher, I was trying to use the verses of Kabir, Sant Kabir, because for the North Indian context, it really worked, working with Kabir. And I came up with collaborated with these, with a few others to come up with these cards. For example, this is one of the very famous lines of Kabir, who says, Hindu kahe Ram hamara, Musalman kahe Rahimana, आपस में दोनों लड़ मरते, मरम न जाने दोनों जाने. So both the Hindu says Ram, Muslim says Rahman, and they fight with each other and they don't know the essence. So this is a very classic line of Kabir. And what I was doing was I had to simplify the language. When I worked with people, many people, like for example, I was talking to people on the street, they found the traditional verses of Kabir's songs especially a little difficult. And I should say, I also found it a little difficult as a Malayali who was speaking Hindi. For me, some part of Kabir was very hard for me too. So I worked with a Hindi a professor. He simplified it to a more easier to understand language. And then I worked with this couple, Preeti Gupta and Vivek Prasad. So Vivek did these illustrations for each of these sayings, and Preeti did the design. So we came up with these cards, which now actually Navarun Publications now actually they sell these cards. People can buy these cards. It's a set of more than 30 cards. So the idea was, there is a lot of circulation of hate, people to polarize and not to think. I think one way in which some of these platforms work is it limits your space, it puts you to a very particular way of reaction. So the idea was, how can you open it up? So this cards was like a means for doing that. So one thing which I did was I gave these cards to people, and they spoke about, I would give a card to somebody, and then they would give like a bit of a meaning of what did they think about it. So I would like to share a very small video before we stop. I'm going to share the video. Sorry, I will just come to Deepika. Okay. And
my name is Deepika. I'm a student, a learner of class.
I hope you can all hear this properly.
जिसे मारे हो समझ पर आया, वो सब तुम्हारी छाया, एक ही ज्योति सब में जलती, बाकी सब है माया। इस दोहे से कबीरदास जी ये कहना चाहते हैं कि जैसे हम आजकल अपने चारों ओर देखते हैं कि रिलीजन के नाम पे, कास्ट के नाम पे, रेस के नाम पे, कलर के नाम पे, अपीयरेंस के नाम पे इतने ज्यादा जो वायलेंस होती है, जो कम्युनल वायलेंस हम कह सकते हैं, जैसे ऐसी जो चीजें होती हैं, तो वो मतलब सिर्फ मतलब वो ये जो भी चीजें हैं ये नेचुरल नहीं है, ये ह्यूमन के द्वारा क्रिएट की गई चीजें हैं। तो जैसे हम आजकल अपने इससे हम ऐसे भी रिलेट कर सकते हैं कि आजकल हम अपने चारों ओर देखेंगे तो मतलब जैसे कभी भी बड़े बुजुर्ग एक साथ बैठते तो जनरली उनकी बातचीत का टॉपिक होता है या तो वो अपने बचपन की यादें ताज़ा करते हैं या फिर सोशल पॉलिटिकल बातें करते हैं, वो भी कि ये रिलीजन ऐसा है, ये ऐसे हैं, ये लोग ऐसे, जो उनके मन में पहले से प्रिजुडिस बैठा होता है वही वो लोग ऐसे बातें करते हैं। तो उन्हें ये समझने की जरूरत है कि ये सब चीजें नेचुरल नहीं है, ह्यूमन एक ही जैसा गॉड ने क्रिएट किया है, और हम गॉड जिसने हमें बनाया है, हम उसी को अलग अलग डिवाइड कर दे रहे हैं कि ये तुम्हारे भगवान से ऊपर है, ये तुम्हारे अल्लाह से ऊपर है, और उसी के नाम पे हम लड़ रहे हैं, जो कि बिल्कुल भी कोई लॉजिकल बात नहीं है.
So this was one way of finding responses from people. Like this was one way of creating a different kind of circulation, because there was a lot of hate circulation. And if you work with social media, you also realize that if you say something nice on social media, you won't become viral very easily. But if you say something like really horrible, then there is very high chance of you going viral. So that's also the nature of the attention economy of the social media platform. So as a practice-based researcher, I was trying to, how can you break this practice? So for me, those cards were very important. They were physical. Because very often what happens is left, right, everybody fights on Facebook, and Facebook gets richer. Everybody's, there'll be the more views, the better for the platform. So instead of that, to have a more of a space of engagement, of thinking. So these cards, and also as gifts, people can gift it to people. And also to this, for practice-based, very often it's a template that you make. And that is what you produce. In some ways, it's a bit like an experiment in science in certain ways. This needs to be taken up by someone else. For example, here, if I was working in Kerala, I would love to make something around Narayana Guru. Kabir is fantastic for North India, but I think here you need to work with another person, another repertoire of work. So this was like this is like an initial idea, and this is a template, and it's there, and anybody else can probably use it. So if you're finding so much of hate, etc., on social media, this could be another way of artistic engagement. And for me, this was also important, because if you look at the repertoire of the work of Kabir, they say, like, people like Linda Hess and all have written about it. In the kind of in many of the other kinds, authorship is very important in most works, but in Kabir's repertoire and many other things, you write something and you say Kahat Kabir. So lot of later Kabir poets have added their own verses to Kabir. That's how the Kabir's verses have become, because you will even find lines about trains in Kabir, which obviously there is, from that time you couldn't have talked about trains at that particular time. It's of course people who added to it. So for me, this giving these cards to the people was also important, because it's also taking up the tradition of Kabir's poetry. But many scholars also argue that, like people like Purushottam argue that, but it has to be of a certain kind of verse to be accepted as Kabir. You cannot praise you cannot create a verse praising caste and it wouldn't pass off as Kabir, because it has a particular character to that verse. So this is something which I was trying to experiment with other people and younger people, for them, how can they relate to it. So this was an experiment which I did. And but I should also say that it's also very little difficult to do it as within an established academic frame. By the time I came here, I was doing my publishing my articles separately and doing the artwork separately, because in the German system, the funding schemes would fund you for your theoretical research, but not for your practice part. So this is a dilemma which you find, whereas in British system, they have this AHRC, which has a very established tradition of practice-based artistic research of different kinds. There is even a subsection they call AV-PhD, and it's a pretty elaborate thing. Whereas in India, when we were trying to do it, the thing was, you're trying to fit it within the UGC system. It's not like the UGC has something like the AHRC has a document about practice-based research. You were trying to fit in Jamia, we were trying to fit it in within the UGC, thing, rather than I think, but the body itself needs to have any kind of a higher education body need to think of its own, and there should be a different way of you also need rules for research which is in line with international research practices around the world, which is a little varied. So then when you're working from India, these are also the challenges that you face. With this, I would like to stop and would like to open up for any questions. Thank you for listening to me.
Please unmute Jamila.
Sorry. Thank you, Fatima, for that very insightful, I would say, speculation about what new areas of research could be and how to involve people also in the process of research, in the making of the research and making of conclusions. Like you rightly said, those cards that were distributed. And in North India, it had to be Kabir, but in South India, it has to be someone different. So areas of research have now, I think, gone on to templates where more contemporary situations are being looked at. And I think that is what you are also addressing. I would like you to tell us a little more about how WhatsApp actually, the influence that WhatsApp has on individuals and what WhatsApp is doing to our young children, the young generation.
Thank you, Jamila ma'am. So this has been more my theoretical work which I have worked on. So the thing with it's a closed communication, as we all know, WhatsApp. And one of the things for researchers with WhatsApp is, you cannot make a argument of scale because you don't get access to that much data, and it's also very difficult. For example, Facebook, and you get more. One of the main problem is that YouTube is considered like a public platform, whereas WhatsApp is saying that they are a private platform. As a researcher, this is one of my fundamental problems. So, which means they're releasing far less data around it. But in many places, which Brazilian researchers have also argued, it's the same in India. This Brazilian researchers have argued that during election time, WhatsApp is working like rallies. It's like so many minute rallies which is happening. So there is micro targeting which can be done, and also it's also another thing is like there is lot of kind of sort of companies working around it, and it's of course not all of it is organic, and much more research needs to be done around it. There is some amount of work which is happening. So during my research, something which I found very interesting in so-called public WhatsApp groups were there were people who were circulating extremely hateful messages. Then they will also circulate things about, okay, send this, you will get 10 rupees, and there is this very interesting way in which who are part of the digital economy. Then hate also becomes one more thing which you're distributing for very less amount of money. Mm-hmm. So I think it's but in terms of WhatsApp, I would say it's a very complex thing, and I would agree with this parlance of WhatsApp University, which we use to describe people who's just believing whatever is coming out of it. But for a more I think there are individual research pieces I've also done, but to make a very grand broad argument, you need much more research and much more data.
Thank you. I'm opening it up for questions or comments that you want to make. Any questions that...
And if there is more time, I can also show one more video, which is a music video.
Binaji, you would like to say something? You're muted. You're muted.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mila. I just say that I want to congratulate Fatima because it's a very great thing in my opinion. I'm not in this field, but even can understand, and it's a new things and tamasha and practice-based artistic research. These are the very, I think, latest thing I feel, because as I said, I am not in this field, but I liked the way she presented this, and I could see while talking, I could see she was so passionate and very nice. My hearty congratulations to you, Fatima.
Thanks a lot, Veena ma'am. It's very kind of you. Thanks a lot.
It's
Dr.
artistic,
Vijayalakshmi.
Fatima.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fatima, it is so nice to listen from you throughout. But my thing is really, it is so nice to listen you because this artistic practice and researches are a new area. I mean, some of the Indian universities also started to think in such a way that they encourage their students to do research in the practical aspects. Generally, some theoretical framework, we do something in the theoretical framework when we think on research or PhD. Now, actually, the whole thinking process is changed. Ecosystem is changing, and this practice, your area of research is so passionate because it would be nice. It is a good learning for the younger generation to know more about how to do research in the doing this artistic practices and all. So nice. I think we need to have some more dialogue after some time. How you will be going to progress with your research and all. It is nice. After your PhD, how to do postdoctoral in such a line and all. It is actually so nice. Really, it is a good learning for me also. Thank you. Congratulations.
I think Dr. Vijayalakshmi, because you run a school, I would suggest that the school children take up new projects like that, which
Yeah.
becomes more
Yeah.
more recent and
Yeah.
of real value, like
Yes.
how
Yeah.
is practice being used.
Yes.
Small projects
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
school
That
children can take up, and then they'll understand what they are doing also. Why they use
exactly.
the Facebook, why they use WhatsApp.
Yeah. We actually started a new area that is we have to mentor the children for writings and all, thinking and writing. Today we had a session on that. It would be nice if Fatima is in Trivandrum for some time. I can call her for an interaction in school and all. So nice. So nice. Thank you.
Yes, if Fatima will oblige.
Thanks a lot,
Thank you.
for the invitation.
Thank you.
Join. And thanks a lot for your input. Yes, I do think that we can. You're really right, ma'am. And this is a field in which in India you can work further a way of methodology. But one of the
Yes.
problems is, ma'am, for example, a student comes up with a practice-based PhD. This is something which I've seen happening. Then sometimes an examiner or you go to a board which has no clue about what this is. Right?
Exactly.
Then a contemplative person will come and say, what research are you doing? So then you have to really explain what is happening. So
Totally.
this is a problem. This is a bit of a problem. So I think there is a need for a structural thing. Like in the UK, there is an AHRC which has clear guidelines. So another problem is people just coming and just making one film, just another documentary film, and just calling it a practice-based research, which is also a problem because internationally there is accepted practice of what is practice-based research. Just doing practice will be art practice. It wouldn't be called research. So those intricacies, but I think it's also a structural thing which the higher education bodies need to look at, and give attention to. Very often all the focus is on science, STEM research, but I think one of the important things is STEM and other kinds of research to work together, because you will come up with platforms, and then you will have the problems, and when the problems becomes too much, then the humanities researcher starts addressing it. That's probably not the way. Maybe it should be pretty early. All this could be explored much earlier, but I do feel the lack of structure And there are many problems which young researchers do face, especially when they do it in India.
Yes. Thank you.
Yes,
Doing and
you're
speaking
right.
is something different, you know. Jamila teacher, somebody is doing something and speaking on it. That
Yeah.
is different, you know. That is a feel we can, I mean, the knowledge transformation is happening in such a way that, you know, doing and speaking.
Yeah,
Such a nice.
we are also
Yeah.
we are also getting to know, like in Kerala also, research on this area on arts, especially since Fatima talked about STEM. You know, suddenly everybody has gone for the science and mathematics. The arts seem to have been sidelined. So this is the time when practicing art, because everyday life is a formation of an art. So I think that is one thing that needs to be addressed, and you cannot ignore that. Because even if you play with the artificial intelligence, you create images, there is some creativity in that which goes into that. You have to tell artificial intelligence, I want you to look like this, or this is the way I want it. So there is a creation of an art even in that. There is an artistic practice in that. And that is dependent on your psychology. Because every individual will not say the same thing to AI, because every individual is different and preferences are different. I think that's the way we can create a world of differences and yet keep united.
Totally, Jamila.
Anyone else would like to say something? Please unmute. Usha?
Yeah, Fatima, that was very interesting. And for people like me and Binaji who are not in the academic line, it is informative because we are learning new things, new concepts. So it was very interesting for us. And I think there is always a criticism that research is, there is a gap between research and real life, because when research reports come, we find that there are so many gaps. Will this practice-based research sort of fill that gap? Do you think research will move closer to life rather than be in an abstract way? Do you think it will bridge the gap? Even if it doesn't bridge the gap, will it bring it closer?
Thanks a lot, ma'am, for a great question. I do think for especially where I work, I think, human technology interactions and all, I do feel like, art practice, especially artistic research, can play a great role there. For example, for me, it was important that the students not to hold the young people onto the WhatsApp platform itself. Sometimes they shouldn't be looking at those images, because even very young people are looking at very violent images which are coming to family WhatsApp groups, and you're looking at it. So for the cards were something else, so you are beyond the platform, you're coming out and having a social space out of that. So I do feel, a lot of, and there is also not just practice-based artistic research. We also have like a tradition of action research, which has been around in India for some time. Action research has been around, which actually you're working with the problems of the society. And I do think that research does add to the society, but we very often write it in a language which nobody understands, and nobody can make much sense of. But of course, art practice really opens it up in different ways. And there is also a need to integrate research with everyday life. There is a need for that, rather than putting it on a very high, in Malayalam you would say like Ganda Gopuram, ivory tower, But I think especially artistic research, it's working with processes around you. For example, one of my colleagues in the PhD program, she was working with the experiences of women who survived or were going through breast cancer. So there were these multiple screens she put up, and it was about with care, how do you relate those experiences of those women. So these are all like really what is something which is a very integral relationship with the world around you. So I feel, especially with practice-based artistic research in a context like India especially, I think it can bring research more closer to common people.
Yes. Thank you, Fatima.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you, Fatima. We have a message here from Bhuneshwari, who is not here in India. She's traveling, but she has just said, I could only join a bit late today and not able to speak, traveling, but want to say the talk was very interesting. It was a new subject for us to learn, was able to catch up on some of Kabir Ke Doha and its interpretation. The video content was quite interesting. Thank you, Fatima, for the excellent presentation. So that's from Bhuneshwari, one of our members from Kozhikode, who is out traveling. And to add to what Fatima just said, for a very long time, particularly literary research has always based itself on abstract theoretical premises, and then you went on to analyze texts or analyze situations. But now it's slowly changing so that it is moving from the lived experiences to formulating theoretical premises about those lived experiences. I think that's a change that I was talking about at the beginning, because there is no stasis in our learning process, and our learning process continues to change, and we adapt to existing situations. Especially with WhatsApp, to add to what Fatima said again, WhatsApp is just not messages. What I have found particularly with the children is they keep on forwarding messages that they get from others, videos, pictures, things like that get circulated so fast. And maybe that influences the mind of the teenager also in such a way, that they are unable to see the true picture, because they live in a virtual reality. They think that this world is like this. So I think in that way, WhatsApp also sort of engages, or I won't say corrupts, but it engages the minds of the new generation. What is your take on that?
And I think there is less application of mind or application of your thinking.
Yeah.
So the children lose out on that. Whereas when you read a book, you need your imagination to, think about the situations and the places and the scenes. Whereas in WhatsApp, most of the things are so explicit, you don't have to use your brain at all. I'm sure it will interfere with the development of the brain itself in young children and young adults.
Thanks a lot, Jamila ma'am, and ma'am, to you also for the questions. Thanks a lot, and thank you, Bhuvneshwari ma'am. And ma'am, what you were saying about WhatsApp, not just children, for older adults also. When you look at a lot of conflicts, especially in North India, there are many of them have started with social media posts. So this is happening, and this becomes becoming like a start of violence. This is also very much there. And also another thing is also what you said, ma'am, is very correct. When you look at, there is, in researchers also talk about design of platforms, how does that work? For example, in Twitter, you can only say this many lines. So the platform's design itself is like, you cannot create like a long poetic form there. It's made like that. And WhatsApp, very often, we all are familiar with WhatsApp fights. You would see more people fighting in your family group than if you see them in a family gathering, probably. So there is like particular designs, things of, because there's also this research on, are these platforms designed for democracy? The need to look at, whether they address needs of democracy at the design level itself. Then in the case of Facebook or YouTube, there are also the algorithms which keep suggesting you what next to see. So all this is very complex, and which can have very different impacts on different societies. For example, the WhatsApp problem is also very much of an Indian problem. In Germany, they don't have that extent of a problem with WhatsApp. So it's also very often these technologies work with particular political circumstances and histories. For example, in Myanmar, Facebook was accused of being one of the factors which led to the genocide in Myanmar, because one of the things was through Facebook basics you are giving. There was even, I mean, there are studies which saying that, you know, were there enough moderation? Were there people who were really trained in different languages to moderate? But these are also important questions for us Malayalis. We also need data about how is the Malayalam moderation being done? You know, what is happening? You know, all these are questions which very often the companies don't even provide enough data of any of this. This is not just WhatsApp. You know, you get some amount of countrywide data, but language specific communities, what is happening, you know, how it is being done, very, very specific issues, you know, which is a bit of it is a larger global problem, but smaller language communities like Malayalam or any other language in India, which is smaller than Hindi, they have their own particular issues as well. So this all needs to be looked at, because digital spaces are creating new social spaces for us, but here the platform companies, they are governing, they are our unelected rulers of some kind. So how are they functioning is also something which we need to look at as a society to have, and how is it adding to our existing socio-political issues. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Fatima. That was a very interesting presentation and very topical issues of what is happening around us. If there are no more comments, can I ask Usha to wind up? And
yes. So it was a very interesting session. Thank you, Fatima, for spending time with us and explaining the theme. I think all of us enjoyed your talk and we learned some new things. As Jamila said in the beginning, you must always get something new from your experiences. So this has been one such experience. So we continue our series in the next month also. We'll come back with another talk on a different interesting topic. And also we continue our series on careers for young women, challenging careers for young women. So next Saturday we have one session where we'll have a session on employment opportunities in the public sector in India. So I hope all of you will join. I'll be circulating the link very soon. And then like that, we hope to continue and do many more interesting sessions in the coming months. So I thank all of you for joining us and spending time with us. So thank you, Fatima, once again. I hope you will continue your connection with AIWC. We would like to have young people like you on board so that we can make use of your experiences and talent in many different ways. So thank you, everyone. I think we can wind up the session, Jamila.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you,
Yes.
all
Thank
of you
you.
for joining us.
you.
Thank you, Fatima,
joining.
for the
Thank you.
presentation.